Welcome to the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude we've come to welcome Kim C, who's come to share on the topic of living in the principles of the steps, a design for living, for up to 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for the Q&A portion of the meeting. So with that, Kim, it's over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name's Kim. I'm a very grateful recovered addict. I'm hailing from Toronto, Canada, and I'm very, very, very honored to be here. So I really wanted to talk a little bit about the principles of our program and living in them, because, you know, these are the 12 values that absolutely transformed my life, right? And I lived in the opposite of those for years and years and years and years, when I'm just going to very briefly say this. I was out there for a really long time. I was out there for 27 years, and I was really out there for 27 years. I spent most of that time on a street corner. You know, when I came to you, I was like 98 pounds soaking wet. My kids were in and out of the system. I couldn't stop. I in and out of jail. I had tons of convictions. Everything you could think of. I drove everybody away from me. And, when I come into recovery and I start to see that there's people just like me, but they're living completely differently, right? And they're talking about these positive principles in their lives. And, in the beginning, when I'm first coming in, I think everybody's like a Dudley do-gooder. I have no idea why, these guys are all so good and I'm so bad, right? But, with a good sponsor and learning the steps, everything starts to change. And there is a principle equated with each step. And so, the first step is honesty. That's the principle of the first step. And so, for all those years, and in my early recovery too, I was dishonest as hell, right? It was as natural to me as breathing to lie, right? To steal, to cheat, to do all those things, And then I'm in recovery, and I'm learning about a different way of living. And in the very beginning, I really thought honesty just meant not stealing and not lying. That's what I thought. Those things, the big black and white things. But, as time goes by, I start to learn there's other kinds of dishonesty as well. Like the manipulation things, like the withholding information, lying by omission and commission and everything else, right? And then as more time goes by, like true onion, right? Layers are getting peeled off. And then all of a sudden, I'm starting to understand that also honesty means I'm not doing something I don't want to do just because I want you to like me. And that was a really big lesson for me to learn, because I learned, living a life of honesty. And it says rigorous honesty, but as you all know, I am human, as you guys are all human. And, it's certainly far from perfect. These principles about progress and not perfection. But for the most part, my natural recoil is not dishonesty. I remember a lot of my dishonesty was always driven by fear. So if you would walk up towards me, pointing at me and say, Kim, did you do this? My fear? No, it wasn't me, right? Even though it was me, right? It was, like I said, it was as natural to me as breathing. So I remember starting to really see how dishonest I was. And I never thought I was, I thought I was a good person, right? And intrinsically we are all good people, but I was absolutely buried under dishonesty. So now I try really hard, to the best of my ability, to, especially if it's a knee-jerk reaction thing, to stop and to try to see where is this coming from? What's my behavior going to be? I will also tell you at this time in my recovery, and I've been I've been in the program almost 20 years, and at this time in my world, I don't feel well when I lie, or if I move towards dishonesty, which still happens because I'm human, right? But I don't feel well, and I don't like not feeling well. And so if I do something that I'm not supposed to be doing, I will deal with it right away, because I just don't like it. I never want all that darkness inside me to build back up again, because that blocks me from the power, right? So that was the principle of step one. So the principle of step two is hope. And how does that, when I'm out there, I didn't really even think about a future. I didn't think about anything. The only thing I thought about was the next hit. That's all I thought about. There was nothing. And I came to a place where I was pretty sure I was going to die either with a crack pipe in my mouth or a needle in my arm. And I had these two little boys, and much as I loved them, it wasn't enough to stop. And they had lost their father to this disease. And I almost became resigned to the fact, almost like the guy in the doctor's opinion. He was resigned to the fact that he was going to be, he's the guy in the barn, and he was determined to die, right? Unless somebody told him he could actually recover, right? And so that's how it was for me. What happened, and for me, this is the power of the group, and this was my experience. The power of the group. When I walked into that first room and I heard people share their experiences, and in the first little while I didn't hear anything, it was all gibberish to me, right? But when I started to be able to hear, and I could hear people talking about what it was like for them, and for some reason, and they were like me, worse than me, not as bad as me, but they had all suffered addiction, like and the phenomenon of craving and all the consequences that come with that. But they were living a different life. Oh my God, right? That was huge. And that was where my first little bit of hope came from, right? And for me, that was huge, right? So, so hope is about believing that there might be something out there, right, that could help me, and it was hard for me at first to come up with that, because I was, don't you know, a self-made woman in a self-made world, right? But the truth was, my life was a complete disaster, and so once again, with good sponsorship, I have a great sponsor, and my sponsor showed me, because I had a big problem with traditional religion and a white Jesus and this guy with a beard and all. I had a problem with all that stuff, right? Because the world I came from, right? I was out in a world where a lot of really bad things happened to people all the time. And so I had a big problem with all this stuff. And I thought, and here's the other part that actually I struggled with. I thought that because I didn't believe like everybody else believed, that I was doing something wrong. I'm doing something wrong, and I'm very visual. So when my sponsor took me through We Agnostics and showed me the line that says, we found we did not have to consider somebody else's perception of God that was impressed upon us when we were little. Because it was in black and white and I could see it, it was like, oh my God, it's true, And so I had some hope that my life could change. I knew I had to get connected to something. And so in the beginning, it was actually the higher consciousness of the group. These guys were doing something I really couldn't do, right? And so that was my beginnings. And of course, over time, my hope has evolved, and my concepts of the power in my life has also evolved. And I'm a completely different person regarding the concept of hope and of having a higher power in my life now than I was when I walked in. And I've seen it with my own eyes, and I've experienced it with my own soul, So, and I'll tell you, I still remember, I remember the day that, I was driving past this canal in Montreal. I used to live in Montreal, and the sun was shining, and it was like diamonds sparkling on the water. And I never saw that before, and I was just like completely blown away, right? And this is after doing some work with my sponsor and doing the whole admission that I'm powerless and that my life's unmanageable, and coming to believe that there might be some hope for me, that there's something out there greater than me. And then I just realized in that moment I had not thought about using for like 2 weeks. It was amazing, right? So then, I end up, so I have to surrender, right? This is, I have to surrender. I have to have faith. So I have this little beginning. And I think that, my sponsor tells me, okay, so, we're going to make a decision. Are you ready to make your decision? So what's my decision? My decision is to turn my thinking and my actions over to the care of something greater than me, right? That's it. So that's my surrender, right? It doesn't, and I was afraid. I thought I had to control everything all the time, right? I couldn't surrender. How can I surrender, right? If I don't do this, this bad thing's going to happen. Or if I don't do that, blah, blah, blah. So, but I was like a horse with a little carrot, So something small that, I had to rush forward to try to fix. Little by little, I was like, okay, they say I don't have to do that, right? So it was hard, and I want to try to step back and see what would happen. And I'm telling you, pretty well every single time, whatever happened was much better than anything that I could have ever come up with, right? And so that helps me to grow. And then, so I make this decision, and even today, my surrender and my faith, about turning my life and my will over to the care of something. Well, it's pretty simple. When I make a decision without considering, and without meditation, and without prayer, they're usually pretty self-centered decisions. And but when I pause and ask, what would a loving higher power have me do? Always different from what Kim wanted to do, right? I work really hard, and I come home from a long day at work, and there's a chocolate cake on the table. I'm going to have a piece of that chocolate cake, don't you know, right? I deserve that because I work really hard, right? I'm going to do that. And that's what Kim wants to do. But if I slow it down just for a second, and this is just an example, but just for a second, and I think about it, what would a loving higher power have me do? Well, I'm diabetic. I've got grandkids who would like to see me stick around for a while. I'm trying to lose weight. There's all kinds of good reasons when I slow down and think, what would a loving higher power have me do? Now, in the old days, it would be like, well, if there is a loving higher power, that power would want me to eat that entire cake, right? But, things change. Thank God for that. And so, I start to trust this just by these little steps. These little steps of letting go of things and just seeing how magically they take care of themselves. I'm, and I don't care who you are, right? I know that my experience and the experience of many of my friends is like, I have to do this sometimes 1,000 times a day, right? Surrender, right? It's very, very different for someone like me that, used to always have to do everything all the time. And even now, like I can give you, okay, I'm going to surrender my financial situation to God, the universe, whatever it is, things I'm just going to trust. I'm going to surrender my health lifestyle. I'm going to surrender that over to this higher power, whatever. But the relationship, oh, no. I got to manage that one. Right? And whenever I do that stuff, I usually get sour grapes out of it, right? Um, but now that I have this little connection, I have this little connection with this power that I'm starting to trust. I trust it enough to move into the next step, the surrender, right? I surrendered, and now I'm ready to move into the next step. And the principle associated with step 4 is courage. And for me, I never ever wanted to look at myself. I never did. I always wanted to believe that everything bad in my life was because of somebody else, right? Everything, you know. I had a very rough upbringing. There was a lot of really weird stuff in my childhood, and of course, I blame that for everything. I blame that for everything. You know, I was in and out of jail, like I said, and that's because, don't you know, the police picked on me. They didn't like me, right? You know, they cut off my power. They cut off my power. How dare they? They were just like giving me a hard time. Right? Never mind, I haven't paid the bill for months, right? You know, everything was somebody else's fault. And so, you know, I get to write this inventory that I really don't want to look at, and I'm really afraid. But, you know, I'm going to have some courage. I'm going to pray for the courage. I'm going to pray for the courage and the honesty and the faith. The things I've experienced so far, to be able to do this to the best of my ability. So when I do that, I always love, in the big book, when Bill talks about the first 3 columns, and he's mad at Mr. Brown and his wife and everybody, and why, you know. And when I looked at those first 3 columns, and my sponsor showed me those things, I still remember, like, that's how I thought my entire life. You did something to me. It impacted me like this, and I'm mad at you. That's what it was. My entire life, I thought in those 3 columns. And of course, then I got to have, this is where the courage part comes in, right? I have to take a look, and it tells me I have to return back to this list because it holds the key to my future, right? So I go back and I add this 4th column. I never ever thought about that before, but what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? What motivated me to do this? What was actually impacted me? Like all these things, and I come up with this information that I was really afraid to unearth, right? And I got to see some things, right? And the courage behind, and I think, for someone like me who is, I have this huge, big head and no self-esteem. The whole idea of looking at myself and admitting some truth to myself is very, very, very scary, right? Because I'm hanging on by a thread, right? Half of my whole issue in life is that I want the world to love me, and I don't even love myself, right? So I get to actually sit down with somebody armed with the facts who has done this work, and they didn't die, so I guess I can do it too. And so I take a look, and and I find out some truth. I find out I'm selfish, I'm self-centered, I'm dishonest, I'm full of fear. There's all kinds of different adjectives. I'm suspicious, I'm bitter, I'm manipulative, I'm all those things, right? And in the beginning, I was horrified. It's like, oh, right? But I learned also that as long as all the things wrong in my life are somebody else's fault, I will never get better, right? Because we all know victims don't recover, right? We don't. Victims don't recover. So I've done this. I've had some courage now, but now comes the really hard part. Like I've unearthed these things, and I've admitted them to myself, to God. But now I got to play with some integrity. I got to have some integrity in my life, and that means I'm actually going to own this stuff, and I'm going to tell somebody, right? And that was really hard. And I will tell you, the very first time that I tried to do this, and tried to, be super honest and truthful and tell the truth, blah, 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 but all that stuff, I actually only said a little bit of the bad stuff, just a little bit, because I wanted the person that I was giving it to, that I was sharing it to like me. I didn't want them to think I was a bad person. So I told them enough stuff for them to be convinced that I've got a problem, but I kept all the rest to myself. And I did not get better. I got much worse, right? Finally, when it actually did happen, and when it happened for real, when I really did, the reason why I was able to finally have some integrity with this thing is once again because a sponsor showed me that it says in the book, again, I'm visual. If I see it written in black and white, chances are I'm going to believe it. And it says we think that newcomers didn't succeed because they didn't complete their house cleaning, and that stuck with me. And I remember for the first time owning something verbally out loud to somebody, another human being, that I thought was just friggin' atrocious, right? And I remember my sponsor's a male on top of that. My sponsor said, oh yeah, blah, blah. And he said, is there anything else? Is there anything else? So there was, right? And so I remembered, and I asked what the book said, and then I, remembered that, I've got this power, and I've been trusting this power now in my life, and so out it came, and this is what that little moment of integrity did for me. He, when I looked up at him, I was scared to look up at him. I was like this, and I looked up at him, and he had like a little half smile on his face, and he says to me, I want to tell you that everybody does some effed up shit when we're under the phenomenon of craving. Everybody does stuff. Everybody does stuff they're not proud of. Everybody, right? And when he said that to me, that little measure of integrity, I actually rejoined the human race at that point because I didn't feel like I was a part of it. So, yeah. So then, so now that I know I have, I know these things, and so the next step we're looking at is step 6, and the principle is willingness. Willingness. How do am I willing? Am I willing? Am I willing to change? Am I willing to let go of these things? Am I willing? Right? And I was willing to let go of many things, but not everything, because I really didn't know how to live without some things. But as I trusted this power, and as I inventoried myself and watched myself, little by little, I was able to move my feet a little bit in the opposite direction of where I normally go, right? And I would, I really had to ask for help, right, to be able to do that in the beginning, right? So, and today, because of my experiences, like the wonderful things that happened to me when I was just willing, either to consider a different way of being, to take a different approach, to do anything, to have an open mind, because I was willing, I think about that when I'm afraid to do something now. And it was like, I go like, oh my God, when I was willing back then and I did those things, it was good. Even if it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, it was still good, right? So why wouldn't I not be willing now to do things that are a little, out of my regular way of being, So, so willingness for me, the willingness and the humility, step 6 and 7, they are like pivotal for me. They're huge, because that is truly where, this girl here starts putting her pedal to the metal, right? So willingness is always essential. It doesn't matter when I'm out there, when I'm in here, wherever I am, I have to keep an open mind. I have to, right? So, and then the humility comes in. Now, that was something that was non-existent. It was, I was doing everything. I was this, I was that, I was this. But I knew on a molecular level that my life was crap and that I couldn't fix myself. If I could have fixed myself, I would have done it so long ago when stuff first started to hurt, when stuff started to go south in my life, like a long time ago. If I could have fixed me, I would have done it, but I can't. And now I have some experience. I have a little bit of faith now. I have a little bit of hope now. I have a concept of something that's greater than me. And so I'm able to accept the fact that I can't do all these things and I need help, right? And so I ask this power. Or sometimes in just regular working life, I need help. I ask somebody else. I never wanted to ask anybody for anything before, ever, right? It was me. I got this. And of course I didn't. My life was a good testament to that, right? Um, so I'm my life now is very, very different from what it used to be. And you know, these when I think about the difference, it's like day and night, absolutely day and night. Just give me a second, guys. Yeah. I'm old too, and I don't remember everything. So, all right. So, yeah. I wrote a couple of notes because I have seriously bad ADD and I go all over the place. So I just wanted to keep myself on track here. So, so now, what is the principle? What's the principle of step 8, right? The principle of step 8 is, I just lost it. My mind goes slow. Compassion, brotherly love, compassion, right? So, I was never compassionate. Never. Everything had to be for me. I would blame people. People would make a mistake and I'd like cuss them up and down. I was just mean spirited. There was no compassion. There was no brotherly or sisterly love or anything like that, right? It was really a horrific way to live. It really was, And the other thing about living in these principles is that I start to grow a conscience, right? I grow a conscience. And as a result of that conscience, I start to see things a little bit differently. And one of those things is when I go around judging other people, when I step back and I breathe and I think about it, I'm judging them for stuff I did myself, right? Same stuff I did myself, So, where's the compassion there? Where's the gratitude there? Where's the gratitude that, I live this great life now because of these principles? And why am I going out judging somebody for stuff that I did, do, or may do in the future? It's like, whoa, Um, so then I'm looking at step 9 after that, which is discipline and justice. Those are the principles behind those steps. And so when I think of justice, I think of, if somebody does something wrong to me, or they rob me for $1,000 or something, I want justice. I want justice, right? And so, I will do the things I got to do to have justice. So why would the people that I harmed not want justice also, right? And, that's a big part. That's a really, really big part of my program and my recovery, is that I always have to be mindful of that. I had to clean up a lot of things in my life. I had over 100 people on my men's list. And I'll tell you, I'm still not all the way through, but I'm way, way more than maybe 3/4 of the way through. And of course, my life has changed like dramatically since I started living this life and doing these things. And the beauty that I saw, even the people that I was really, really afraid to approach, that I had done wrong to, those people, some of them I just saw what was in their face, and they were finally being acknowledged for all the crap they put up with me. They were finally getting that, right? Like that's justice, right? That's it's a spiritual kind of justice. You know what I mean? And it's also connected with discipline. So and what does that mean for me? Discipline means restraint. It means restraint of tongue, restraint of pen. It also means restraint when I'm making an amends to somebody, that I don't want to blurt stuff out that's going to hurt them, right? That's all discipline, right? And I can apply those principles to my life, right? To my life, to every aspect of my life, discipline and fairness, right? Um, and then we go into step 10, which is perseverance, right? And so I'm persevering with this program. I'm following the daily must do's, right? But I can take that principle and use it to other parts of my life. Also, every single one of these principles, I have to live in them because I apply them to my entire life, So I have to persevere. When things get tough, I can't just give up. I got to persevere, right? I've been recovered, and I've been granted all these amazing possibilities, right? I can't just give up because something's tough, or stop because somebody says something to me that hurts my feelings, or whatever. I have to persevere, and I have to persevere with watching me, with watching the person that is like operating in the world, and so that I love my step 10. I love to say step 10 is my walking around underneath my arm stuff, right? Because it's right now, it's right here, it's right now, and it's prompt, and and that's what it is. And I try to live in that type of perseverance in watching myself as well. And I have to keep doing that, because if I don't keep doing that, oh my God, it won't be long before that unravels. And once that unravels, I'm not going to be willing to make amends anymore. That's going to unravel. And once that unravels, I'm not going to be willing to make lists or have compassion. And then once that's gone, I'm not going to be humble anymore. And I'm not going to be willing anymore. It just goes right backwards to the point where I'm just back to the beginning, right? So yeah, and then we have this step 11, which is a spirituality, right? And conscious contact. And this is just a huge part of my life, and it is one of the most crazy things when I think about my life before, for all those years, right? And I think about my life now, right? I would never ever for 1 second stop and think, or pause, wait for some sort of intuitive thought. Never. I was the intuitive thought, right? I never had time for that side of life. I never did, and it was very evident in the way I lived my life. I would blame other people for things. I'd rob you and say, well, you shouldn't have been drunk, right? Stuff like that. I was like really sleazy, what I mean? And so now when I think about how I live and having this connection and trying to spend time with this power and be quiet and see how, how I'm supposed to deal with something, and it is true. It says the right answers come, when you do it quite often, you get accustomed to doing it. And so I have this great life where I can be quiet, I can pause, I can try to hear, and if I don't hear it right away, it'll be presented to me some other way. I know it will, right? And then I can talk to this power. I talk to this power all day long. I'm sure that power says, not her again, oh God. Right, because I talk all day. Like I'm sitting here at my desk and I'm like, oh, what should I do, God? Right, but I'm never alone, right? And then and I have this service thing in my life, which is the final principle of the 12 steps. There's also principles for the traditions and for the concepts. There's a principle for each one. But for the steps, the last principle here is service. And if I didn't have this principle, if I didn't have service in my life, it gets me out of myself. I'm self-centered and I'm selfish like every other addict, right? And so when I'm not careful about spending time with others and giving of myself, I can go back into self pretty easy, right? And so, those opportunities for me to be out there and to help others, they're amazing. And again, the people that I help in the program and not in the program, the people that I help, they help me more than I help them. And it's always like that. It's always been like that, right? For me, sometimes, life, my life is still amazing no matter what happens. It could be a crappy day, and from where I was before, my life is still pretty amazing, But there's times when I don't feel that great, or I'm a little blue. Things have happened. I fall into a bit of a funk. But guess what? I know there's somebody waiting for me at a coffee shop. So I have to get up and I have to go, right? And thank God, because usually when I leave that coffee shop, I'm okay again, right? So when I think about living in these principles, this is the complete opposite of the way that I used to live my life. It's like black and white. And if you had told me those years ago that I would be living a life where I would be trying to look at these things on a regular basis, I would say, yeah, you're nuts. I don't even know what those things are. Like, what are you talking about? Right. But, I find, and I'm not perfect. I fall off the beam all the time. Right. But when I stay connected to the best of my ability and I try to employ these principles in my way of living now, my God, even when things don't go the way I want them to, they still go pretty good. I'm in a different place, and my world has changed immensely. As a result of this, as a result of these 12 steps and trying to live in these principles, I found stuff within myself that I never even knew existed. Right? I found truth. I found abilities I didn't even know I had. I came into the recovery at the age of 45, and everybody my age had, they had houses and cars and all that stuff. I had nothing. And I thought that I would never, ever catch up, right? But I got connected to this power. I got connected to the power, right? And so now, I'm 64 years old, and I'm sitting in my own office, and I'm a legal representative. How does that happen, right? I went back to school at 50. Right. That's how the power worked in my life. Right. It gave me courage. Right. So anyways, to make a long story short, these gifts, these principles they're like sacred treasure. Right. And employing them in my life or employing them in your life will change your life. And it's not my world or your world. It's not my world that changes. It's me and my perceptions and my connection that has changed. So I think I reached my time. So that's all I got. I'm done. Thank you for having me.
First up, we have Doreen. Would you like to come in with your question?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'm Doreen. I'm an addict and alcoholic. And Kim, I had no idea when I popped on this meeting that you would be sharing today because I usually see you on We the North. I'm very, very grateful for your share today. It's meant so much. It's been past couple of days. I feel like I've been a little stagnant. I don't know why. Well, I know why now. I actually tried the two-way prayer for the first time this morning, and it's been amazing. My question is, so to date, the amends that I've made are really, big parts that I played in hurting other people. But tomorrow I have set up time to go make an amends with a person who was really difficult with me when I was like, when I was really sick, and she blocked me from like being able to get, any kind of help, whether through disability with my EI. She's part of human resources. And so my question is, how do I, how do I go there tomorrow and approach this with her without, bringing up those things? I know I'm not to like, bring up the things that she had done, but my brain's just been ticking away up there because I'm like, how do I do this? Because so far, like I said, it's been people that I know that I've actually hurt myself. And, yeah, do you have any like words of wisdom or some advice to give me?
I wouldn't go so far as to say wisdom, but anyway, um, in my experience, I had a similar situation, and when I wanted to go do this amend initially, and I was still like, he did this to me, blah 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 blah, and all this kind of stuff. So my sponsor told me, you're not ready to make the amend. He said, you got to do some inventory, you got to do some more inventory on it. You have to do some more inventory on it, and you got to clearly see your part, because I'm there to clean my side of the street off, right? And it also instructs me to leave out of my mind, leaving out of my mind the harms, whether fancied or real, that other people have done. I'm resolutely looking at myself here, right? So, and I'm looking at my mistakes. And so, if you still feel resentful, maybe you might want to talk. And I don't know. That's what I would suggest. Maybe talk and do a bit more writing.
Thank you for your question, Doreen. Chloe, you're up next.
Hi there, my name is Lorenzo. I'm an addict. Kimberly, I don't know if you saw my message. You spoke at my home group a couple of weeks ago that bridged the connection. I've since checked myself into a treatment center. So that's why my name says Chloe on here. I'm using one of the nurses' laptops. I'm trying to do as many meetings as I can. If I can't reach them in person, I'm trying to reach them online. So yeah, coming from treatment, I mean, I've seen the same faces every day for the last week or so. I've only been here for a week, but I've been sober for 3 weeks today. So yeah, it's nice to see a familiar face, and your story at Bridge the Connection inspired me, and your story today, continues to inspire me, and I continue to think about it. And when I was doing my intake here, actually, I was speaking to a guy, his name's Mike. He's in the program as well. And I was mentioning how your story touched me at the last meeting and kind of, wanted me to get as many tools in my belt as I could, including coming to treatment. And he goes, "Who was it?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I forget her name." I go, "She's a light-skinned lady. She looks like an office worker." And he goes, "Kim, I know Kim." So I said, "No way." I said, "It's funny that she's so well known in the community, and just thank you for your service and continuing week in and week out to provide service to all of us in the community." And again, being in the UK meeting, I wasn't expecting to see a familiar face. So thank you times a million.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo, and welcome to the meeting. Really good to have you here. Hope to see you back soon. Young, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac. Hi, my name's Young, recovered addict. Thank you so much, Kim. Always good to see you. Good to hear you. Lorenzo, welcome. Hope to see you again, my friends. I'm glad you're getting help, man. It's amazing, this program. Anyway, Kim, yeah, practicing these principles in all our affairs. I was thinking without help, it's too much for me. And what you said at the end was just that. It was exactly it. It like just, as they're like this gift, aren't they? As I'm able to start living in this different way, my perception just changes slightly. There was a beautiful thing you said. I can't remember. It was about integrity, and you said at that moment I felt part of the world. That was so powerful. My question is, I know you've been around a long time, 20 years, I think. That's amazing. And you talked a little bit about where you came from. How did you find CA, and how were you 12-stepped? Thank you. Thanks, Kim.
That's a great question. So how did I find CA? So I was done. I had no place to turn, nothing. And I knew one person that I could talk to, and she was in a halfway house from prison. And so I contacted her, and it was a miracle, because normally when you're in a halfway house, you don't have access to the phone or anything like that. And for some reason, this is God in my life. It was a fluke, but she actually answered the phone, and I told her I don't know what to do. And she says to me, she says, well, I'm going to these meetings out here because when I was in jail, these guys were bringing a meeting into jail, which is why I love H&I so much, right? So she says, come with me. So I went with her. The first meeting was our parent fellowship, which was, it was a soft place to fall. And it was the first time I ever heard of anything, of a possible solution of anything. And then my friend told me, well, there's another one that, a fellowship that will be more maybe in tune with us. And that's how I ended up in CA. And I love CA. Everything I have in my life should be stamped property of CA. I love it. I just love this fellowship. So that's how I got here. And did you ask me something about the 12 steps again?
No, that was it. That was it. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for your question, and thank you, Kim, for the answer. Andrew, you're up next.
Evening, everyone. Hope you're well. Thanks for everyone who makes the meeting possible. And Kim, thank you. Kim, I just want to touch on the perseverance. You spoke a bit about perseverance. So I link perseverance in with motivation, and I was just interested, how do you maintain motivation when facing significant obstacles in your life, and link that in with the perseverance?
Good question. So how do I persevere in the face of difficult obstacles is what you're asking me. Okay. So this is, I guess for me, the perseverance is actually in this kind of a situation for me directly connected to faith, right? I just have to persevere and I just have to trust. I have to trust that whatever's going to happen, it'll be okay, even if I don't like it, but I'm not going to give up, right? Like I said, my experience is that, this beautiful power universe God in my life didn't recover me for me to give up. Right. So that's basically it. I rely on faith and I just keep chugging. Right.
Thank you, Andrew, for your question. Maddie, you're up next.
Hiya, thank you. Thanks so much, Kim, for your share. It was amazing. My question was just around the principles and how did you kind of come to learn about them, like more specifically, and were you kind of sponsored into learning more about them, or just how did it look, kind of getting a broader and wider understanding of them and how they relate to the steps? Thanks.
Oh, that's great. That's a great question. So, the first time I actually, I had heard that there were these principles connected to the steps. I'd heard that. But I was actually at a convention, a CA convention, and somebody was doing a workshop and they talked about the principles of the steps, and they had this cute little PowerPoint and all of this. And I thought it was amazing. And I just fell in love with that whole idea. And ever since then, I've been excited about them. Right. So yeah, that's pretty well it. That's the answer I got for that.
Thanks, Maddie, for your question. Lorenzo, if you got your hand back up, did you want to come in with a question?
Hey, sorry again, Lorenzo Addict. Quickly wanted to ask, again, being in the early steps of recovery, I'm still struggling with obviously finding that life purpose. Obviously, that's a big thing is once you know your purpose, you're pushing towards that kind of every day and making the conscientious decisions to take the right steps towards that purpose. And being so early in recovery and you having done so many years of being through so many years, how did you deal with the urges when you didn't quite have that purpose? My thing is I'm I don't see myself as a failure without purpose, but I'm like, oh, if I have no purpose, the urges, I find them taking on so much more weight on my brain and on my chest kind of thing.
Good question. I guess the best answer I can give you regarding that is in my experience, I had sworn off time and time and time again, and it never worked. So the last time around, I didn't swear off. I just started showing up. I didn't swear off. I just kept going and going and doing everything everybody told me, right? And then like I mentioned earlier, one day I had realized I hadn't even thought about using for 2 weeks or something. And and that was it for me. I did not. I don't. I think that in the beginning, we all want to know everything right away. We want to know our purpose. We want to know this, that, and the other thing. But it's about doing the rest of the work as well to get connected to this power, and then things will be revealed. Yeah. So I think that's the best answer that I can give you.